This is a story from my childhood. When I was a kid, I lived in a 2-story rented house. My mother also worked, so I was often alone when I got home from school. One day, I got home late from school in the evening, and the house was dark. "Mom!" I called out, and from the second floor, I heard a small voice reply. "Yes?" It felt like she was calling me, so I went up to the second floor. I called out to her again as I reached the top of the stairs, and from the end room, I heard, "Yes?" I was overcome with a sense of unease, but I really wanted to see my mother, so I slowly approached the room. Then I heard the front door open downstairs. My mother was unloading her shopping bags. "Shinsuke, are you home?" she called out in a bright voice. Thrilled that she was back, I ran downstairs. But as I did, I glanced at the end room for just a second. The door creaked open. At that moment, I saw something strange through the gap. A white face was looking right at me. "Hey Mom, have you seen my mug?" "What do you mean? Look in the cupboard above the sink." "Why would it be up there?" "You know I can't reach that high." "Ugh, whatever. It's too early for this. I need my coffee. I need my..." "You know what? Never mind. I'll just get a new mug. I don't need that one anymore." If you're looking for exclusive Kowabana or Japanese horror merchandise, head over to kowabana.threadless.com right now. We've got mugs, t-shirts, phone cases, bags, and much more. And we're adding new designs all the time. Don't let angry spirits claim your stuff as their own. Head over to the Kowabana Threadless store right now. Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to another episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. This week, we're doing a Kowabana Origins special. What is Origins, I hear you ask? Next week, on Thursday, October 4th, the latest, greatest, and final in the Kowabana series will be released. Unlike the first 3 volumes, this particular book features the best and most consistently praised and shared creepypastas from 2000 to 2010. These are the stories that set the tone for Japanese internet horror. The stories that were so popular, they became modern urban legends in their own right. I've been working hard on this book for quite some time now, and it's finally ready to be released. This is also the last book I'll be publishing in the Kowabana series. In the future, I'll be focusing specifically on this podcast when it comes to creepypastas, and for my publishing efforts, I'll be focusing more on my own fiction and research books, such as Toshiden. But, in celebration of Origins' release, I'll be featuring just a few of the stories on this week's episode. Just a little taste of what you can find inside. There are over 25 stories inside the book, most of which have never been seen in English before. So, let's get right into it. This next story comes from 2002, which was considered a rather quiet year for creepypastas. Until this story came along, anyway. I'm not going to give any spoilers for this one because it's better if you go in blind. This one's called at your own risk. "5 years ago, when I was in junior high school, one of my friends died. The official reason given was mental illness, but in reality, he was possessed. It's a memory I'd like to forget, but the other day I ran into an old friend and everything came flooding back. The 5 of us, A, B, C, D, and myself, were all destined to inherit our family businesses. So we watched those who were studying for their high school exams from afar and had far too much free time on our hands. We often skipped school, but the school didn't mind as long as we didn't bother those who were studying. Once the sports festival was done, as long as we showed up to morning class, they really didn't care what we did after that. One day, I heard a story about a nearby residence from my friends A and B. Apparently, the owner of a newly renovated house hung themselves inside, and now the place was empty. We were struggling to find a good place to hang out when we weren't at school, but if that place really was empty, we'd be able to drink and smoke there. So during lunch the next day, we skipped out and went over. It was a gorgeous building. You couldn't tell anything just by looking at it on the outside. We felt a bit nervous about whether we should go inside or not, but A and B forced their way in, going, "It's okay, it's okay," over and over. Perhaps someone had already looked around inside because the back door was open. We went into what looked like the study, hid so you couldn't see our faces from the outside, and started drinking. But we soon got bored of it because we couldn't make a lot of noise. So the 5 of us started looking around. C then pointed to something near the roof in the room we were in. "What the hell is that?" There were 2 small windows at the top of the wall, like you might see in the music or broadcast room at school. "Is there another room in there?" Looking closer, there was a door on this side of the wall, blocked by a bookcase. We piggybacked someone up and they opened the window by hand. Thinking back on it now, a bad smell wafted out of the window that we probably should have been more concerned about. But we wanted nothing more than a place to drink in secret, so we forced the window open and went in. The room stank of mold and dust and something rotten. It was damp, like maybe there was a roof leak. It wasn't exactly a music room, but there was handmade soundproofing wood all over the walls, and wallpaper had been pasted on top of that. It was all bubbled from moisture in the air. It's worth mentioning that there was no furniture in the room. There was a simple desk in the corner. On top of that, there was a large photo frame with a blackened out picture. "Oh, what the hell? That's creepy," A said, picking up the photo. The moment he picked it up, a piece of paper fell out of the frame, as well as a bundle of hair that fell loose. The paper was a charm. Everyone was so freaked out they didn't say a word. B watched the colour drain from A's face and suggested we get the hell out of there. As he tried to climb up to the window, the entire section of wallpaper peeled away. Charms the same as the one from the photo frame were posted over the entire wall. What the fuck? C, who wasn't the strongest drinker, looked at it like he was going to throw up. Shit, shit, shit! This is no time to be throwing up. Come on! D and I pushed B's backside up to the window. We had no idea what was going on. Behind us, someone was screaming. It was probably A. He was cursed. I was so scared I couldn't turn around. All I could think about was climbing up to the window, and I jumped down into the other room. D followed, and when we tried to pull the slower C up, he started screaming. Ah! Ah! Stop pulling my foot! A voice that sounded like A was groaning and making strange sounds like a dog from inside the room. We could hear the sound of C's feet kicking the wall furiously, perhaps because he was squirming so much. B! Bring Kannu-san! D yelled from behind us. Something's possessed A! Go out the back and get Kannu-san from the shrine! B ran barefoot out the back veranda, while the rest of us tried to pull C out the window. My foot! My foot! Does it hurt? It doesn't hurt, but he bit me. Looking closer, there was a round bite mark on his heel, where his socks had come off, and saliva dripping down. A continued making sounds, but I was so scared I couldn't look at him. Do you really think something's possessed him? What do you mean? A's still alive, man. He was kicking a lot as you came out. Hey! A Shinto priest in trainers came running in from the veranda, his face pale. You! What have you done? You idiots! B came running in with him, his face a mess of tears and snot. Whatever. You lot just leave now. Go see Yorie-san in the office behind the shrine. Go! The priest grabbed my arm and twisted it up behind my back. I heard a snip. All right, go. He slapped my back and pushed us out of the room. No idea what was going on. We ran. We climbed the mountain out back, went to the office behind the shrine, and a little old lady in white clothes was waiting for us. I felt like she was extremely pissed off at us, but I was so relieved after running from that place that I really don't remember that well. After that, we didn't see A at school. My parents were called to visit the shrine several times, but they never told me what they talked about. All they said was not to visit the back side of that mountain. After what happened there, we had no intentions of going back to the mountain anyway, and passed our time feeling very small at school. After the final tests were finished, I was called up by the educational guidance officer. I wondered if he was gonna rip me a new one, and I prepared myself for a beating. But when I got to his office, B and D were already sitting there. So was the Shinto priest. The guidance officer was nowhere to be seen. When I entered the room, the priest started talking. All right. So, C died. I couldn't believe it. That was when I found out why C hadn't been at school the previous day either. He skipped school and came to see A, who's been staying with us. This wasn't like hospital visiting hours. It was dangerous, and he knew it. He peeked into the tatami room through the back lattice and shrieked before passing out. When I found him, his eyes were rolled back, and he wasn't breathing. I thought it was a bit rude to speak of C, who had just died, like that, and was about to say something back, when the priest looked at us all seriously. Listen to me. I want you to act like A is already dead. Don't forget what happened to C. That thing can't see, so it can't haunt anyone that doesn't know about it. But if you do, no matter how many years it takes, it'll come and find you too. If it finds you, it'll possess and kill you. Oh, and don't grow your hair long. If you ever run into it and try to run away, it'll grab your hair first. After he told us all of this, we left the room with heavy hearts. When the priest grabbed me that time, he must have cut off the back of my hair with scissors. I thought it must have been some kind of charm, but it wasn't that at all. I stopped by the barber shop on the way home and shaved my head. We were supposed to take on our family's businesses, but after graduation, we had to give that up. We all went our separate ways and moved to different prefectures. We agreed never to show our faces to each other again, and if we ran into each other on the street, we'd pretend not to know each other. I entered a high school in the next prefecture over 1 year late, tried to forget my past, and threw myself into my new life. I kept my hair cut short, but every time I went to visit the barber and asked him to shave it, I was reminded of the priest's story. Will it come today? Will it come tomorrow? I spent 3 long years worrying about it. After high school, I spent a year studying and then entered university in another prefecture a year later. Only during the Obon holidays did I let up and agree to return home for a while. I always loved my grandpa, and during New Year's of that year, he passed away. It was all very sudden, but my parents called me to see if I would at least return for his first Obon ceremony that year. That was a mistake. I went to the store by the station to grab a newspaper when I saw the clerk was a girl I knew from junior high. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. Apparently, B and D were both dead. Not long after graduation, B was found dead in his boarding school room. He hung himself. The storm shutters and curtains were closed, and anything that resembled a door was affixed with seals. And on top of that, he stuck a strand of his own hair to each of them. There were signs that he tried to seal his own eyes and ears shut with wax, but in the end, he was unable to. and killed himself. During the summer he turned 17, D fled to Shikoku, but he was found wandering around the outskirts of a city near Matsuyama in his underwear, laughing like a madman. All the hair on the back of his head had been plucked out, like by a crow or something. But D didn't try to force his eyelids shut. Instead, he cut them off with a knife so he could keep them open at all times. I'd never detested the relationships I made during junior high more than at that time. The end of B and D's lives had nothing to do with me in the present. I mean, the only person left to remember that thing now was me, and I was forced to realize that. I arrived home with a tight feeling in my chest. Nobody was there. I later found out there was a tradition in our area called mourning rounds, and for households that had a particularly big loss during the year, they would visit a temple in Nara for the first obon after the loss. I was eventually taken there as well. I had a fever 9 degrees over normal for 3 days straight after that, and was forced to stay in bed at my parents' house. At the time, I was ready to die. I lay out the futon in the family altar room, put on white clothes, drank some water, and got ready to sleep. At dawn on the 3rd day, I saw A in my dream. He had blackened skin and bones, and his eyes were cold. You're the only one left. Yeah. You should join us over here. I'm good. C wants to see you. Nah, I'm good. If you don't, we're gonna beat him up every day. Tie him upside down, put socks in his mouth, then kick the stuffing out of him. Don't you feel bad for him? Liar. Hell wouldn't go that easy on him. Hell, huh? So you call it hell. I woke up. I could hear the sound of my own breath as it struggled to escape my throat. When I looked beside the futon, I saw my grandfather's mortuary tablet had cracks in it. I realized something. It finds those who know about it. If I told a bunch of people about that thing, then its chances of finding me would lessen. Thank you for reading this far. If I wrote it all down roughly, I don't think anyone would remember what I said. To those who read this, I'm terribly sorry. Just think of it as like being bitten by a dog. And if you want to heighten your chances of survival, you should make sure as many people see this story as possible. Probably a good time to get that haircut you were thinking about, right? But that's not all. We still have one more story for you this week. This one from 2003. 2003 saw quite a few popular creepypastas rise and gain notoriety. Kune Kune was one of them, which we've featured on this show before. But this next story came out the month before that. This one's called Heesudookie. I heard this story recently from a friend who works in a nursery school. The nursery school these kids go to also has a temple attached, and there's a graveyard nearby. There is a fence surrounding the area, so the children can't get in and mess around, but apparently they often find bugs and lizards skewered on top of the fence pickets. It's probably just the kids getting up to mischief, but because the nursery school doubles as a temple, people are coming and going all day. Elementary school students often play in the yard as well, so it's difficult to know who does it. But it could even be the birds, so no one there takes much notice of it. But then one day, they found a mole skewered on one of the pickets. Of course, this would be a little grotesque for nursery school children, so the headmaster, the temple monk, quickly disposed of it. A short time later, they found a cat skewered on the fence. This was, of course, very bad, so the carers and monks got together to discuss who could be doing it and what they should do about it. But they didn't know who the perpetrator was, and nobody had any good ideas for how to stop it from happening again. In the end, nobody had any ideas, and as more time passed, they next found a rabbit skewered on the fence. It was the rabbit they were raising at the nursery. My friend was apparently the one who found it. It wasn't there when the monk went out in the morning to clean the graves. There was a child there that morning who arrived earlier than my friend, so she asked the child if they saw anything. "It was Heesudookie," the child answered. Who is Heesudookie?" my friend asked, but the child was unable to explain. The child didn't seem terribly concerned that the rabbit was dead either. Somehow, they came to realize that there was little they could do. But what was strange was that the child's parents had no idea about this Heesudookie either. Nobody had ever heard the child say that word before, nor was it a character from TV or a book. But then another of the nursery school carers revealed, "I saw that name on a picture a while ago." But the nursery gave the pictures back to the children after they drew them, so it was no longer in the building. The child who drew the picture lived in the same neighborhood as the carer, however, so she at least remembered their name. "Why don't you ask that child?" my friend suggested. But the other carer said, "They moved away." The circumstances surrounding it were strange, so I remember it well. Apparently, they up and left town without telling anyone about it. What was even stranger than that, however, was what the carer saw when they were in the process of leaving. She saw the child who drew the picture sitting in the car, both eyes covered by a bandage. Nobody knew where they went after that. After that, a chicken was skewered on the fence, and that was the end of the Heesudookie turmoil. In the end, nobody found out who or what Heesudookie was. Bugs are still being skewered on the fence like before, however. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. If you enjoyed these stories and want even more, you can pick up Kowabana Origins next week, on Thursday, October 4th. This is by far the biggest and best volume of Kowabana to date. The cream of the crop. The stories that Japanese readers have consistently voted the scariest and most influential on the creepypasta genre. I'm really proud of this book, and I hope you'll enjoy it too. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.